On this episode of an in-depth look, a review of the MSI Wind Netbook. The netbook market has definitely taken off recently. Initially, I think it was a product line that some people doubted, but there's clearly a strong trend to high sales of netbooks, and it's really kind of all was ignited with the Asus eeePC 701. I picked up one of these units when they first were released, and I think what kind of defines the netbook category is I honestly believe sub $400, maybe sub $500, a smaller screen, lightweight, and maybe more task focused, like for internet and email. It doesn't have a lot of processing power, but is very good at some basic tasks. I think that kind of defines the netbook market. And one of the new contenders in this market that's seen a lot of success is the MSI Wind. The MSI Wind, I think initially was being sold, and really, when you think of MSI, you kind of think of motherboard manufacturers and video card manufacturers. You don't really think of laptop. At least, well, I don't really think of laptop vendors, but they are. And initially, they developed the Wind as an OEM resale program where they would sell it and other vendors would rebrand it. But then MSI saw the sales were doing so strong, they decided to come out with their own product, and they called it the Wind. So I've recently picked up an MSI Wind, and I thought I would review it here on an in-depth look. Overall, I really like the MSI Wind. It's got a very good feel to it. It looks very, very high-end. I mean, looking at it, you can't really tell so much, but looking at it, it feels like a very high-end product. Now, you'll have to excuse the tape here. This is the protector screen that comes with it, and just to help during shipping, I guess. And, it has a good-sized keyboard. As you can see here, my hand fits pretty comfortably on the keyboard as compared maybe to the Asus eeePC, where the keyboard always felt a little cramped, a little claustrophobic. The Wind has a much larger keyboard. Well, I guess I wouldn't say much larger, but it feels like it's much larger. I still have some typing issues on the Wind, but the larger size, I quickly adapt to the size of the keyboard. I'm typing at near full speed after I've used it for a little bit. The other thing, of course, is the screen on the eeePC versus the screen on the MSI Wind. The 701 has a 7-inch screen, whereas the Wind has a 10-inch screen. So there's obviously a much larger screen area here. The hardware specs of the MSI Wind, they're pretty good, especially for what you probably will be using this device for. It has a 1.6 gigahertz Atom processor. These are essentially Intel's Core Solo line of chips that have been pared down and don't have as much cache and some other functionality. I don't think they have virtualization support, the VT extensions and things like that. They ship default with 1 gig of RAM. That's mine. I don't know if you can hear my eeePC booting up. They ship default with 1 gig of RAM. I upped it. I upped mine to 2 gigs. You cannot do that, as far as I know, as a build to order. It's an aftermarket thing, and it does void the warranty. I don't know what that's about. Voiding the warranty to upgrade RAM. I mean, who does that these days? When the eeePC initially shipped, Asus said it did void the warranty to upgrade your RAM, and they later redacted that statement and said you can upgrade the RAM without voiding warranty. MSI has not done that to my knowledge. It is still a warranty breaker if you upgrade RAM, and I had to do it. 1 gig, that's not enough for me. That's not how I roll. It has a 120 gig hard drive. My model does. 120 gig spinning hard drive. It comes in several different variations. I believe it has an 80 gig unit, a 120 gig unit, and a 160 gig unit. It's not the fastest hard drive, but that's, again, not what these units are for. The screen is very nice. The screen has it's 1024. Sorry, the reflection's horrible in the video. It's 1024 by 600. It's 10 inches, and it's LED backlit. If you're not familiar with LED backlit laptop displays, the color and the brightness is fantastic. Plus, the very nature of LEDs, they're low powered. So you get a really great combo with an LED backlit system. It uses, for a video card, it uses an Intel GMA 950. That's a pretty standard video card. Well, it's actually even kind of an old video card by today's standards. But it has a couple of really nice advantages. One, it's low power. It is an integrated unit. It's not a discrete with dedicated memory, but because it's low power, it equals better battery life, and it does have support for DirectX 9, OpenGL 2.0, And that basically means that under Windows Vista you would get Aero, under Linux you get Compass Fusion, and under OS X you would get Quartz Extreme. Now, why don't I talk about the OS X aspect for a moment, because I think that's what's contributing to some of the sales of the MSI Wind. The base hardware of the MSI Wind lends itself to running OS X extremely well. In the OS 86 world, that's the world where you can run OS X on standard hardware, there's the vanilla kernel, the actual Apple kernel, and then there's hacked kernels to run on different types of hardware. Whenever you can run the vanilla kernel, that's where you're going to have your best results, because you usually will be able to install Apple updates and things like that. The MSI Wind hardware does support the OS X vanilla kernel. So that would, in theory, mean, I believe, now I'm not an OS X on PC hardware expert, so don't take my word for this, but I believe in theory that would mean that you could actually install the system updates for OS X like you would on a regular Mac, where that's not the case on a hacked kernel, because it would overwrite the kernel and then your system wouldn't boot. So the disadvantage, though, is the wireless card that comes in the Wind is not supported by OS X. And because OS X has an extremely limited hardware that it supports, you are kind of stuck on that unless you replace it. It is a replaceable wireless card. It's a mini PCI unit, so you can replace it with, say, some other Broadcom-based unit like a Dell. Dells are you can find them online they're Broadcom-based, and you slide in there. But again, this voids your warranty. But then at that point, you essentially have complete 100% hardware support. Even the webcam works under OS X, a fact that many people would like for video conferencing and things like that. So I think really, if you look at the two units side by side, and I'll try to hold them up here for the video, you can really see, in fact, I can actually set the EEE on top of the MSI Wind here, and you can kind of get a visual for the size differences there. The MSI Wind is it's larger, but it's a good kind of larger. It's not too big. Everywhere that in every aspect that it's larger, it's better. It's a slightly bigger screen. It's a bigger keyboard. All those things are a lot better. The EEE line of products from Asus has a lot of different variations, and they have larger screens and larger keyboards too. So I'm not saying that there's not a solution there. I just happen to think for $350 US, what MSI is offering with the Wind does surpass the other Asus line of products. Now, I'm a big Asus guy, so that's just for now. But overall, I definitely have to give a thumbs up to the MSI Wind. It's a great product with a lot of versatility. I see online, now I'm not doing this myself, but I see online that people are triple booting this thing with Windows, Mac OS X, and Linux. It definitely it'd be just as easy to dual boot this thing with Windows and Linux as it would a standard PC, or you can run just the entire operating system. That's kind of the nice flexibility of having a complete hard drive in there instead of the 4 or 8 gigs of SSD that I have in the EEE with the MSI. Because I have a 120 gig hard drive, I've got room on there for multiple partitions with multiple operating systems. So something to consider. And again, for $350 at retailers like Best Buy and places like that, you can't really go wrong. I don't know. If you're in the market for a sub notebook or for a sub laptop or a netbook, not a sub notebook, but a netbook, I definitely would take a look at the MSI Wind.